to remember Dodi, Zichrona Livracha, and to celebrate her life on this, her third Yahrzeit. Before we start the program, I want to share some exciting news. As Rabbanit Bina just said to me, we have a custom to put a stone on the kever when we go visit someone who we lost. And as Rabbanit Bina said, we put the stone on there because we use the stone as a building for going forward. So as some of you may know, together with Matan and Matan Beit Shemesh under the leadership of Melissa Raymond, Yehuda Rock and I are spearheading the building of a new women's Beit Midrash here in Beit Shemesh that will honor the memory of both Dodi and Avigail Rock, two women who were the pillars of the Matan community here in Israel. We're currently working through the approval process with Iriat Beit Shemesh that is taking a little longer than we expected, but we will be kicking off the fundraising campaign in the near future. And I sincerely hope that all of you will become partners with us in this incredible project for the women of Beit Shemesh and for our entire community, which will also be a fitting honor to these two incredible women that left Olam Hazeh way too soon. Rav Soloveitchik once reflected on the pasuk in Parshat Shoftim that we read yesterday. The pasuk says, when you besiege a city to wage war against it, do not destroy its trees by wielding an axe against them. Rav Soloveitchik taught that this pasuk tells us that a tree takes a long time to grow. It cannot be rushed. You can accelerate the building of a structure quickly if you hire more workers, but no amount of workers can make a tree grow faster. Growth in nature requires time, patience, and care. And so it is with people. The process of raising, teaching, and shaping a person is slow, sometimes tedious, but ultimately beautiful. Spiritual growth, too, is like the growth of a tree, gradual, steady, requiring nurture and constant attention to details. That's why Yeshayahu teaches us, Va'amech kulam tzadikim le'olam yirshu, aretz netzer matai ma'aseh yadai lihit pa'er, and describes the Jewish people as the shoot that I, Hashem, planted, the work of my hands in which I glory. Each one of us is like a small, delicate planting of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who waits patiently to see us grow, to see us take root, and to see us flourish. Human beings resemble God through creative action. Just as God is called a planter, we too, especially as parents, must emulate God and become planters. The Torah itself commands us in the second parak of the Kriyat Shema, V'limadatem otam et b'neichem ledaber bam, b'shiftecha b'beitecha, u'v'leftecha v'derech, u'v'shavtecha u'v'kumecha. And you shall teach them the laws and the statutes of the Torah to your children, to speak of them when you sit in your home, when you walk on the way, when you lie down, and when you rise. I recently heard Rabbi Shmuel Ismach of the Young Israel of Great Neck quote a beautiful teaching of the Chafetz Chaim on this pasuk. The Chafetz Chaim notes the subtle shift between the Kri and the Ktiv of this verse. It reads otam, them, but it is written without a vav, atem, you. From this, the Chafetz Chaim derives that parents cannot fulfill their obligation of chinuch merely by transmitting information or relying on others to teach their children. Rather, atem, you yourselves, must continue to learn, to grow, to embody Torah. Only then can Torah truly be passed on to the next generation. As the Mishnah in the second parak of Pirkei Avot states, Rabbi Yossi Omer, "Ha'echen etzmecha lilmod Torah she'enei yerusha lach." Prepare yourself to learn Torah, for there's not an inheritance, a Yerusha for you. You have to work at it. Torah knowledge and growth don't automatically pass down like property to the next generation. Each of us as parents must actively strive, study, and work for it. And this was exactly Dodi's way. Her chinuch of our 4 children was never just about words or lessons. It was how she lived. Through her constant learning and her determination to grow spiritually at every stage of her life, including the last few days of her life, she showed Ami, Gidon, Matan, and Moriah what it really meant to be an Eved Hashem. Her emunah was the center of who she was. She was always working on herself, always striving to become a better version of herself, always trying to live up to her potential and make the world a better place. And I believe these teachings will endure forever for my children, who will be'ezrat Hashem transmit these lessons to their children and to their future generations. For Dodi, the teachings of the Chafetz Chaim was real. True chinuch banim is not about teaching Torah. It's about living Torah. And she did just that. Dodi planted seeds of Torah, of Amunah, and Avodat Hashem. But maybe most of all, she planted seeds of deep, unconditional love for her children and grandchildren, her family, and her friends. Seeds that are still growing, still bearing fruit, and will continue, be'ezrat Hashem, to bear fruit for future generations. Even though she is no longer physically with us to see and taste the fruits of her planting, I have no doubt that in Shemayim, she continues to enjoy the sweetness of those fruits that she works so hard to nurture here ba'olam hazeh. Yehi zichra baruch, may her memory be a blessing. And now, it is my great pleasure to invite Rav Yamin Goldsmith to deliver tonight's shiur in memory of our dear Dodi. Following the shiur, we will daven Arvit, and then there'll be some cake in the lobby. And I ask everybody to eat some cake because Dodi really loved cake. So please eat cake, take a piece of cake, and make a bracha li'ilui nishmata.
Erev Tov, everybody. Birshut Harav, Birshut Mr. and Mrs. Fishman and the Fishman family and Mark. It is, we hope, Emet Hashem, that our learning this evening will be in the zechut, God willing, of Chayei Tzahal. They should be able to return to their homes safely and quickly, Emet Hashem, some of whom are in this room, descendants of Dodi herself. Emet Hashem, our learning will be in the zechut of the Chatufim. They should be able to return to their homes safely and quickly, Emet Hashem. And Bezat Hashem also, our learning should be, of course, Ilu Nishmat Miriam Dodi, Bat Yehuda Leib B'Chana Yocheved. It's a great zechus to speak this evening. I have known Dodi since either 1973 or 1974. If you lived in Chicago in those days, so you knew the Fishman family. And if you knew the Fishman family, you knew Dodi. And over the years and in various ways, I have had the great zechus to get to know Dodi and her siblings-in-law, and of course her parents. They should live and be well. But I never dreamed that Joy and I and Mark and Dodi would be forever connected, not only in the hearts, but also in the genes. through our beautiful children and through our beautiful granddaughter named after her. And sometimes Joy and I feel saddened, as Mark just mentioned, that Dodi is not here getting nachas from our granddaughter Noam and all the children and her grandchildren. But I truly believe, as Mark just said, that Dodi is indeed getting nachas from Noam and from all of her children and from all of her grandchildren. And I truly believe that her personality and her life lessons and her smile and her energy and her love for Eretz Yisrael and for Am Yisrael and for Torat Yisrael all still guide them and still guide us every single day. She is in a very real sense, a direct and strong influence on her family even today. I remember hearing from Mark more than once that Dodi used to say that she was taught a lot of Torah, but she didn't learn about God. And having a relationship with God, making him a part of our lives. And it seems that she spent her life doing exactly that, trying to connect to God, find ways to connect to God, find ways to thank God, to have a conversation with God. And with that in mind, I wanted to share some ideas about one way that we perhaps can improve our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I think this is a topic that Dodi would enjoy, and I think that we can all learn from this in Elul and throughout the year. As always, when I speak to myself, and I welcome everyone to eavesdrop. I understand that not everybody has source sheets, so I'll try to speak outside as much as I can. But there is a halacha that enables us to connect to God regularly in every single day. The Gemara in Maseches Menachos, the top of the first page, tells us, Tanya Haya Rabbi Meir Omer, Chayav Adam Levarech Mea Brachos Kol Yom. We have an obligation every single day to make 100 brachos. Shene'emar, as the Torah says, it's the second source down. The Torah tells us in Parshas Ekev, V'ata Yisrael, Ma Hashem Elokecha shoel me'imach. What does Hashem ask of you other than to fear him, to follow in his ways, to love him, to serve him with your entire heart? So we'll come back and talk about how easy, in quotes, that sounds like it's supposed to be. But this pasuk is a proof that we're supposed to say 100 brachos every single day. And we'll come back to the proofs in a little bit in Mitz Hashem. But every Rishon that speaks in halacha quotes this lahalacha. The Rif, the Rambam, the Rush, the Tur, the Shulchan Aruch, the Mishnah Brura, and everyone in between quotes this lahalacha. We have an obligation to make 100 brachos every single day. And in fact, the Gemara, if we go back to the Gemara for a minute, the Gemara says that Rabbi Chia Bereder of Avi, B'Shabbata u'v'yomei Taveh, Torach u'memale lehu b'ispamarke u'megade. During the week, when we say Shmona Esrei 3 times, it's not 3 times 18, it's really 3 times 19, and we eat bread and we bench, it's a lot easier to get to 100 brachos. But on Yontif, on Shabbos, when we don't have so many brachos in our Amida, it's a lot harder. So the Gemara says that Rabbi Chia bar Rav Avi used to make an effort to go out of his way to find ways to make brachos. He would make brachos on spices. He would make brachos on sweet fruits. I davened Ma'ariv last night in an Edot HaMizrach shul, and they had 2 different kinds of spices in the back of the shul to make brachos on to get to 100 brachos. In fact, the Rambam, Rav Moshe ben Maimon, who died in 1204, says exactly that. If you can't get to 100, you got to find ways to get to 100. Even we can't make brachos she'eino tzrichos. We can't go out of our way to make brachos that are not necessary, but we do go out of our way to make 100 brachos. And it's incredible because this is exactly what we're discussing. It's exactly that. The idea that Chazal set up a system where every single day multiple times a day, we check in with God, we think about God, we thank God, we ask things of God. Excuse me, we have an active relationship with God. As a matter, oh, thank you. I will take that actually. Thank you. I'm up to 99. Okay, 100. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh bidbaro. I'm done. Okay. It's an amazing thing. If you sleep 7 hours a day, halavai, 7 hours a night. So that's Emir Hashem by all of us. 17 hours a day we're awake making brachos. That's a little more than 1,000 minutes that we're awake on average. At least once every 10 minutes, we're connecting to God in one way or another. It's incredible. All different kinds of brachos, all different kinds of connections, all to be able to find ways to relate to God, to thank God, to think about God. And it's a central component to the Torah in that, and Mark mentioned a moment ago, everything in this world is an opportunity to connect with God when we wake up, when we go to sleep, when we learn Torah, when we're doing mitzvos, when we get dressed, when we eat, when we're finished eating, when we go to the bathroom. When we go to the bathroom, I was in Columbia University a number of years ago, and I was with a group of people, most of whom were not Jewish, and we were standing around waiting to get ready to go to a classroom. And I had gone to the bathroom, and after I went to the bathroom, I went to the side and I said Asher Yatzer, and a woman who's not Jewish asked me what I was mumbling to the wall. So okay, that gave me a little musser that I have to say it a little differently. But I said, well, a Jewish person is thankful to God no matter what, even when we go to the bathroom. She went crazy. It was the greatest thing. Halavai, I should have been as excited as she was. It's in every time we have an opportunity to thank God about the most mundane things. And as a matter of fact, it's an idea that's mentioned in a parsha that we read a few weeks ago in Parshas Balak. It's the third source down. When Balak hires Bilam to curse Bnei Yisrael, we know the end of the story. He's unsuccessful. But on the way, he's riding a donkey. Some people say donkey, but I feel comfortable saying donkey here. He's riding a donkey on the way, and he hits the donkey 3 times, and eventually the donkey speaks. The Torah says in Bamidbar, Perek Chaf Beis, Pasuk Chaf Ches, Vayiftach Hashem es pi ason vatomer levilam me asisi lecha ki hikisani ze shalosh regalim. And Rashi Rav Shlomo Yitzchaki, who died in 1105, picks up on the strange language. Shalosh regalim? Yes, shalosh regalim. Rashi says that the donkey was giving a message to Bilam. Ata mevakesh la'akor uma hachogeges shalosh regalim bashana. You're going to fail because you are trying to defeat, conquer, uproot a nation that celebrates the Shalosh Regalim. And the question that everybody asks is, why specifically Shalosh Regalim? You should have said that davens, that goes to the Beis HaMikdash, that bent, whatever it is. So I once gave a shiur with 7 explanations. So we don't have time for any of them but one. I want to share one idea from Rav Shimon Schwab. It's the middle of the first page of Shimon Schwab, died in 1995. And in Ma'ayan Beis HaShoeva, he says the following. He says that what are the Shalosh Regalim? So yes, the Shalosh Regalim are indeed times when we celebrate events and things that we're grateful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for, but also there are agricultural connections to the Shalosh Regalim. Excuse me, the Shalosh Regalim not only have historic connections, but also agricultural connections. And for example, Chag HaAviv, so Pesach is the time of planting, Chag HaKatzir, Chag HaAsif. And says Rav Shimon Schwab, what was the message of the donkey? Obviously, the message of Hashem. If I were riding a donkey, and as on my way to do a job, And the donkey turns around and says to me, how are you? What's going on? What'd you do that for? The first thing I would say, well, actually, the second thing I would say is I can't believe there's a talking donkey. I said the second thing is the first thing is I'd probably faint, fall off a talking donkey. And yet, and Bilam, the donkey says, why'd you hit me? And Bilam says, because this is why I hit you. He's having a conversation with a talking donkey. And without any change, without any excitement, without any hitpa'alut, says Rav Shimon Schwab. We as Jews celebrate, you put seeds in the ground and you harvest them, and we go crazy. We put them in storage and we go crazy and thank Hashem. It's nature. What are we going? Yes, Klal Yisrael sees small things and connects them to God. You, Bilam, you can't even appreciate a talking donkey. You're never going to succeed in conquering Klal Yisrael. And this idea, exactly that, exactly the idea of 100 times a day, if not more. We appreciate water. We appreciate small things as a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as a way to connect with him. There is a great book that I would recommend, and I don't know if the family knows the author, Rabbi Yaakov Danishevsky, who is a clinical social worker in Chicago. He wrote a book called Attached. And I kind of have a feeling that Dodi would have appreciated this book. I highly recommend it. And in chapter 10, in a footnote 5, Rabbi Danishevsky quotes Erich Fromm. Erich Fromm, if I understand correctly, his most influential book is called The Art of Loving, published in 1956. And there he discusses how he dislikes the term falling in love when it comes to a relationship, falling in love. Because falling in love sounds like you're saying, well, it just kind of happens. And what Rabbi Danishevsky says is that Jews understand the same thing. Yes, we don't fall in love with people, and we don't fall in love, lahavdil, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We work at it, and we work at it constantly, day after day after day after day. Falling in love with Hashem, staying in love with Hashem. It requires work. It requires consistent work, consistent energy. And perhaps one can suggest that this is one of the ways we do that. By 100 brachos, day after day, finding ways to connect, working hard to fall in love with HaKadosh Baruch Hu daily, all the time, regularly. So it's our job to, at least 100 times a day, to connect with Hashem, to be in awe with Hashem, to fall in love with Hashem and work hard to stay in love, so to speak. And with that in mind, I'd like to share another idea going further in the idea of 100 brachos. What is the source? What is the source for this mitzvah? So the Gemara said that it comes from a pasuk. V'atai Yisrael, ma Hashem Elokecha shoel me'imach. But what's that source? Where does that come from? So there are 4 major explanations among the Rishonim as to why what the connection is between the pasuk and the mitzvah. We'll go a little bit out of chronological order, but towards the bottom of the first page, we have the Tur. Rav Yaakov ben Asher, who died in 1343, says really the pasuk is not the main source of this mitzvah. Really it comes from a medrash. It's a medrash in Bamidbar Rabbah, Parsha Yudches. The medrash relates that there was a point in history when David HaMelech was ruling, that there was a plague, a terrible plague that devastated the nation. It's not really clear when it happened. It's not really clear what part. We don't see it in Tanakh. But there was a time when 100 people a day, Rahman al-Itzlan, died from a plague, and it was looked into, and they realized that there was not enough of a connection with Hashem, so to speak, as we mentioned. And so therefore, they had to make 100 brachos a day. That's one source, the Tur of Yaakov ben Asher. We have to come back to that because it doesn't seem clear what the connection is between the plague, the Magefa, the 100 brachos. We'll come back to that. Another source, again, towards the bottom of the first page, again, is Rashi. It's Rashi on the Gemara that we just learned. Rashi says that when the Torah says, Rabbi Meir Omer, Chayav Adam levarech mea brachos b'chol yom shene'emar, v'atay Yisrael, ma Hashem Elokecha shoel me'imach. Rashi says, Karibei mea. We read ma. If the Balkore read mea, he'd get corrected. But we also understand that ma means mea. So it's really Vatay Yisrael, mea Hashem Elokecha shoel. Hashem requires of us 100. Again, Rashi's Rashi. Kvodo, he's one of there would be no Torah Shabbat Peh without Rashi. It's hard for me to understand what that means. It says ma. No, but ma really says mea. So we'll come back to that as well. But that's source number 2. We have the tour with the plague. We have Rashi, ma, and then Tosfos. Tosfos has 2 sources. One comes from Rashi's grandson, Rabbeinu Tam, Rabbeinu Yaakov ben Meir, known as Rabbeinu Tam, died in 1171. And he says that in that pasuk, since there are 100 letters, so 100 letters means 100 brachos. 2 questions that we have to ask on Rabbeinu Tam. One is, with respect, therefore what? Therefore what? 100 words, 100 letters, so now it's 100. But an even stronger question is, there's only 99 letters. There's only 99 letters, so Rabbeinu Tam says, no, you have to read ma like Rashi. So ma is mea, and now we have 100. It's something. It means something. But it's hard to understand. So what is that? What does that mean? So that's Rabbeinu Tam. And Tosfos has a 4th explanation, an unnamed in Tosfos. Tosfos says that we all know gematria. Aleph equals 1, Bet equals 2, Gimel Daled. But that's only one framework. That's only one gematria framework. And that is, I guess we'll call it regular gematria. But there's another type of gematria called atbash. Aleph Taf. You take the first letter, but it's not Aleph, you correspond it to the last letter. Bash, the second letter corresponds to the second to last letter, etc. And in Atbash, Ma, Memhei, corresponds to Tzadi and Yud. And what's the gematria of Tzadi and Yud? 100. And that's Tosfos. That also is so hard to understand. It's so hard, it's so challenging. I don't know everything. I don't know if anybody knows everything. But the connections between the pasuk and the 100 brachos seems very challenging. It seems like we have to really look hard to understand where the source comes from. I think perhaps on one level, and I'd like to take it even further, but on one level, I think that that's exactly the message of this halacha and the exact message of this mitzvah. The idea of 100 brachos, the idea of 100 brachos a day, the reasoning behind it is not just to check a box. It's not just to say, well, I did that, been there, done that. 100 brachos means it forces me to look at the world in a way that other people don't see the world, to see things that other people don't see, to see things that are not very obvious. It's a cup of water, after all. No, it's not just a cup of water. It's an opportunity to connect with God. I see things that are not so easy to be seen. Every day, everything I see is special. Every day is special. In the Torah, there's no such thing as a regular day. Every day is an opportunity to see new angles, to see new perspectives. And every one of these answers are not just straight out. There's no pasuk that says make 100 brachos. Make 100 brachos. There is not. I've got to look deeper. I've got to find things that are not immediately visible. And that's what 100 brachos is. 100 brachos is to uncover God's greatness, his gifts, his kindness. And I think that is certainly a general and true explanation for the various reasons why we make 100 brachos. But perhaps one can suggest that each one of these explanations is indeed, perhaps, it expresses a different way that we see Hashem, a different way to connect with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Even further than generally looking more deeply, each one is a different way to connect to God. First, the easiest time, chas v'shalom, the easiest circumstances to forget Hashem, God forbid, to walk away from Hashem, God forbid, is when tragedy strikes. It's easy, God forbid, to forget Hashem or to be angry, to stop davening, and it's understandable. We understand that. But 100 brachos gives that person, lo aleinu, an opportunity nonetheless to see God and connect to God, even if they're not feeling it, even if they don't feel that direct connection. I think of it as a Shabbos elevator. A Shabbos elevator opens up on the 10th floor, whether anybody gets in or not. And it opens up on the 9th floor, whether anybody gets in or not. Doesn't matter. It always opens. It always opens. And that's what davening is in general. And that's what 100 brachos are specifically. Even when a person, God forbid, is feeling distant from Hashem, and we understand it. Of course, chas v'shalom, an oned, for example, is not only not allowed, is not only doesn't need to, is not allowed to say brachos, for example. We understand they're feeling distant, and afterwards they still may not feel it, which we also understand. But the halacha is make the 100 brachos, open the door of the elevator, whether you're there or not, and keep opening the elevator doors, keep opening them, even if you're not feeling it, because at some point, God willing, through these actions and others, there will be that connection, and perhaps that is the understanding of the tour. The tour had said that one of the reasons, the source of saying 100 brachos is when tragedy strikes. When tragedy strikes, we still make 100 brachos. Yes, the connection is when people are feeling far away, chas v'shalom, make a bracha on the most mundane thing. I don't feel it. Anyway, try anyway. Keep going, keep opening the elevator door. And at some point, Emir Hashem, someone will feel able and interested and willing to get into the elevator. And that perhaps is the tour. And that's one circumstance that would require us and challenge us to say 100 brachos. But sometimes it's not a tragedy. Sometimes we're not talking about a tragedy per se. Sometimes things just don't turn out the way we wanted. Sometimes they don't turn out the way we expected. Again, it's not a tragedy per se, but life didn't turn out the way we wanted. And that perhaps is another explanation, another reason behind 100 brachos. At the very bottom of the first page, it's Parshas Kisisa. When Moshe asks Hashem to have his Shechina dwell among Bnei Yisrael, Hashem agrees. And then Moshe also asks to see Hashem's glory, and Hashem agrees. And then, but then Hashem says that Moshe will only be shown Hashem's back, so to speak, not Hashem's face. V'asirosias kapi v'ra'isas achorai ufanai lo yeira'u. You won't see my face. So what does that mean? Hashem doesn't have a face or a back. I can see the back, but not the face. So what does that mean? So there's a beautiful, many Mefarshim discuss at the top of the second page. I wanted to share a beautiful idea from the Chasam Sofer. The Chasam Sofer, Chatam, stands for Chidushay Toras Moshe. The Chasam Sofer died in 1839. And the Chasam Sofer on the Chumash, I won't read it inside. The Chasam Sofer says, I won't say no. Okay, thank you. I won't make a new bracha, but okay, thank you. Anyway, see, we're thinking about it even more. Todah Rabbah. What's that? Born in Christ, exactly. That'll be 100. The Chasam Sofer says that seeing Hashem's back means that sometimes when things happen, they don't turn out the way we want. It's hard to see sometimes the way life turns out when we're going forward and we're going through those challenging times. That's true. It doesn't make sense. We have emunah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of course, knows what he's doing. He's directing the world, but it's challenging. That's true. However, says the Chasam Sofer that when you sometimes look back afterwards, looking at Hashem's back, so to speak, so as things have already unfolded, looking backwards and looking back on them and saying, oh, I can see why that kind of turned out for me. I can see why that happens. And that is exactly why it happened. And the Chasam Sofer says that's what Hashem is saying to Moshe. You will see my back, says Hashem. You will always see me when you are looking back. You must be aware, Ufanai lo yera'u, you will not always see my face, so to speak. You will not necessarily see the good while things are unfolding. That's okay. Believe me that I'm here, says Hashem. Believe me that that I am watching. Believe me that I'm directing. But you may not always see it happen. As a matter of fact, as a little bit of as a parenthesis, in the middle of the second page, there is an idea from the Lev Eliyahu, Rav Eliyahu Lopian, who has relatives in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. He died in 1970, one of the youngest Talmidim of the Altar of Kelm. Explains a pasuk in Shir Hashirim. In Shir Hashirim, it's the second source on the second page, which is a pasuk that's appropriate for why we're here this evening. Shlomo HaMelech says, "Domed Dodi litzvi o laofer hayalim hinei ze omeid achar koslenu mashkiach min hachalonos metzis min hacharakim." My beloved Hashem sees me, mashkiach min hachalonot, he's watching me through the windows, metzitz, he's peeking, min hacharakim, through the cracks in the lattice work. And Rav Eli Lipian says, what's the difference? He's watching either way. Why would Shlomo HaMelech say he's watching through the window and he's watching through the cracks on the lattice? And says Rav Eli Lipian, and this is what we just said, Hashem is always watching, but the way he watches, or I should say the way I react to his watching, is different. When someone is looking at me through the window, they can see me, but I can also see them. And sometimes Hashem indeed watches me and I can see him. I see how it unfolds, of course, it's Yad Hashem. But sometimes when someone watches me through the lattice work, they can also see me, but I can't see them. Sometimes we can't see Hashem right away. Sometimes we know he's there, but we can't always see him. And that is exactly perhaps this second idea of the 100 brachos. Of the 100 brachos. The 100 brachos, sometimes the idea being that the first idea was that when there's a tragedy, God forbid, and we want to maybe take a pause. No, keep going, we keep going, we keep going. But our job is to recognize that everything that happens to us is turning out exactly the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu had planned. And there's a story that's told, I'm trying to think it was told here last year, but I don't remember. But there's a story that's told. Rabbi Soloveitchik died in 1993. He tells the story that in 1929, his father, Rav Moshe Soloveitchik, went to New York to try out, if I'm not mistaken, to be the Rosh Yeshiva of YU. Rabbi Soloveitchik was newly married, had a child, and he says he davened to Hashem to go to America. Why would my father want to go to America? I'm learning so beautifully here. The whole Jewish world is in Eastern Europe. Why would I want to go to a desert called America? And he davened that Hashem enable his father to fail, I suppose, or to turn down the job. And eventually, it didn't happen that way, as we know. Rav Moshe Soloveitchik got the job. Eventually, 2 years later, if I'm not mistaken, Rabbi Soloveitchik and his wife and one young child came to America. And of course, looking back, Rabbi Soloveitchik said, "Thank you, Hashem. Thank you for unanswered prayers. We see what happened both nationally and for me personally," says Rabbi Soloveitchik. "Thank you, Hashem. I see why, looking back, why it was the best thing." And perhaps that is when we see things that are kind of upside down, when we see things that are backwards, we recognize, no, it's actually going forward. And perhaps that is the idea behind Tosfos. Tosfos says, oh, you wanted to read ma regularly? No, it's atbash. When you're looking at an aleph, it's actually a tough. When you're looking at a bet, you're actually looking at a shin. When you're looking at an amem and a hey, it's actually 100, the other way. Sometimes we have to recognize the idea or an idea of 100 brachos a day. We come to appreciate and we come to internalize that Hashem runs the world. You thought that the world had to go aleph, beis, gimel, dal. No, sometimes it's the other way around. And that's also right. That's also true. That's also behind the scenes. But we know who the driver is. We know who the pilot is. And that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Perhaps that's Tosfos. So it's sometimes, God forbid, tragedy, lo aleinu. Sometimes not tragedy happens, but just life doesn't turn out the way we want. And there's a third circumstance, a third thing that happens sometimes to a person. Sometimes, God willing, no tragedies, God forbid. And sometimes things turn out well, but we still complain. And we say our lives are good, but they're almost. I wanted that. Okay, it didn't turn. I really wanted that job. I didn't get that job. I really wanted to. Okay, didn't get the house. I didn't want it. And this idea, perhaps, this third idea, when it comes to Mea Brachos, perhaps comes from another idea in the middle of the page. The Torah in Parshas Kisava, we'll read it soon. The Torah says, Yitzav Hashem itcha, es habracha ba'asamecha. Hashem will command the blessing ba'asamecha. We all know what Osem, the company Osem, asamecha, Hashem will bless you in your storehouses. But the Gemara, the next source down in Baba Basra, tells us that Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, ein habracha mitzuya ella b'davar hasamui min ha'ayin. Asamech hasamui. The brachos only apply to things that are hidden from the eye. What do I mean hidden from the eye? I can't get a bracha on things that I see. So if you took a look at the Akedas Yitzchak, it's the second to last source. The Akedas Yitzchak, Rabbi Yitzchak Aramah died in 1493. What does it mean? Asamecha, samui min ha'ayin. He says that real things, true things, things that are real and true brachos, are not measurable in numbers. Money can be counted. Crops can be counted. Houses can be counted. They're good and they're important. But when we talk about real, true brachos, the essence, authentic brachos, we cannot measure them in numbers. Think about you today. How many happiness do you have? How many happiness? Count up how much, how much? I have a lot, but how many? Well, I have what number? Any number? You can't say how many. How many health do you have? Real brachos. How many health? You can't count real and true things with numbers. Really, really, it has to be samui mina ayin, thing that doesn't have a number. That's the Akedas Yitzchak. Some people look at their lives and they count their brachos. And I know that that's an expression. We should count our brachos. But counting them in general, counting specific brachos is sometimes dangerous because we'll always come up short. We'll always come up short. And perhaps one can suggest that is the idea of Rabbeinu Tam. The kind of person who counts their brachos quantitatively will always come up short. What did Rabbeinu Tam say? We make 100 brachos because there's 100 letters in the pasuk. There aren't 100 letters. If all you do is count up and see 99, you're not going to appreciate true and real brachos. True and real brachos is that when you count 99, it's 100. It's a whole number. It's full. I don't care. If you count by numbers, it's never going to work. Rabbeinu Tam says that when I make mea brachos, 100 brachos, I thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for everything. And I end up forgetting about the quantity, and I think and focus upon the quality. Look, says Rabbeinu Tam, at the larger arc of your life, or the larger arc of history, the family you were born into, your talents, your opportunities, surviving hardships, the Torah, the Jewish people, Eretz Yisrael, the miracle of existence itself. Mea Brachos is about stepping back from the noise of life, stepping back and seeing the vast canvas of Hashem's kindness. If I count, I'll always be short. 99 is not 100. It's okay. I'm going to make 100 and I'm going to recognize that I have all the brachos qualitatively that I need. And perhaps that is Rabbeinu Tam. And we have a fourth explanation. And this fourth perspective is when Chalila, again, no tragedy, things have turned out fine, things have turned out great, but we ask and we say, God, what have you done for me lately? What have you done? We drive to work, and when we get out of our car, hopefully this winter we'll have lots of rain, Emir Hashem, and when we get out of the car, we step into a puddle. Shoes get wet, our socks get wet. God, why do you hate me so much? Why do you do that to me? Why do you hate me? You woke up indoors. You woke up with food. Let me go back. You woke up. You recognized your family. You have a family. You appreciate. You got into a car. You have a car. Your car drove you to work. You drove you in Eretz Yisrael. Your car worked on roads that worked, and you got there fine. You have a job. You have shoes. You have socks, and you stepped into a puddle. Mea Brachos reminds us that anytime we feel like, God, what have you done for us? Whenever we say Ma, Rashi says Mea. That's 100. Every time you say what? Yeah, I have water. I have a job. Modani lefanecha. Shasali kol tsarki. Everything I say, Hazana ta'olam kulo. Every time I think to myself, everything's great. But what? I don't have any. Every ma is really a mea. Every time you say what, it truly is 100. And that perhaps is the way Rashi understands the idea of mea brachos. Just whenever I feel like, what's the most recent thing? It forces me, it pushes me, it challenges me to appreciate everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given me. And so we have perhaps these 4 ideas, 4 explanations, 4 perspectives on what happens in our lives. And every time something happens, no matter what happens in every circumstance, even on Shabbos, even on Yom Tov, Tisha B'Av, last year, this year will be a celebration, Mitzvah Hashem. But last year, every day, we got to find ways to, and the Rambam Paskins, go out of your way, make 100 brachos, so that we can connect to God and see God no matter what. And I think that that's really one of the messages that I and probably we have all learned and continue to learn from Dodi and from her family, to appreciate life and to appreciate what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us, even if it's not exactly what we wanted, even if it's not exactly the way we expected. But to be able to see God in every nook and cranny of our lives. I want to end with a quick story that perhaps summarizes this idea and what this will end. Joy and I were in the market years ago for a used car. And we had a guy. You have to have a guy. No one has a guy. We had a guy. And he called us and he says, I got a car for you. Come to Yerushalayim. We came to Yerushalayim. And he says, here it is. What do you think of it? I mean, I see a car, right? 4 tires. It's great. But no, we looked at it a little bit, talked about it. So he said, take it for a test drive. So I was sitting in the driver's seat. Joy is in the passenger seat. And the guy, I think his name is David. Anyone know David? I think it's David. Was sitting behind us. I don't know if that's his real name. We'll see. And we're driving in Talpiot. And it's a great car. It's a great car. We stop at a stoplight. And I said to him, it's a great car. I just have one problem. I don't know anything about cars. But the name of the car, some of you may have it. I apologize if you know this. It's called a Suzuki Splash. You have a Suzuki Splash? I thought Suzuki Splash is what a seminary student orders to get kicked out of seminary. I didn't know what I said, it's a great car, but I never heard of it. How can I drive I just don't, no one buys Suzuki. There's no such thing. I never heard of it. The only person in Israel is going to be driving a Suzuki Splash. We're stopped at a stoplight in Talpiot. He starts laughing. And I said, what's so funny? He said, look at the car in front of you. I look at the car in front of me. It's a Suzuki Splash right in front of my eyes. It goes further. He says, I think he arranged it this way. He goes, look to your right, literally. Look to your right. I turned to my right, Suzuki Splash. I said, what? How can? And he said to us, that's always the case. that you don't notice anything until you start looking for it. Once you start paying attention, you can see it everywhere. And he said, only in Israel, he said, the same is true about God. God is nowhere to be seen until you start looking. And as soon as you start looking, he's literally everywhere. And 100 brachos and all the mitzvos and 613 mitzvos force us, enable us, free us to look at the cars around us, to look at the people around us, to look at the blessings that we have, that we're showered with on a regular basis. And may HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless us. Here we are in Elul, approaching Rosh Hashanah. May Hashem enable us, v'sechazena einenu, to open our eyes, to see b'shuvcha l'tzion berachamim, to see in Mitzvah Hashem the ultimate geula, and may Dodi's neshama have an aliyah, and may her family have nechama, seeing the legacy that she built and continues to build every single day. Good evening, everybody.
RV. Okay, three things before us, yes. Three things before we begin. Dodi said that. I asked her, how did you